Bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Hello, Lakers Nation. Welcome to the show. As always, we're powered by CLNS Media and LakersNation.com, your home for everything Lakers. Today's show is being brought to you by BetOnline.ag, as well as Vivid Seats, the official ticket reseller of LakersNation.com. Plug in that promo code LakersNation in all caps and get 10% off tickets to your next Lakers game, and also sponsored by LinkedIn. All right, guys, today we've got a ton of things to get to. I know the NBA season is starting to come to a close for the Los Angeles Lakers. Unfortunately, they're not going to be part of the playoffs, and it's kind of been a long season, so I know there's some fans that at this point have checked out. It's been a tough one to stay focused on, but at this point, we still have plenty of things to go over, plenty of things to discuss, because, well, that's the Lakers. There's always things going on in the world of the Lakers to talk about. I am going to bring on Bryan Oringher. He's a former scout for the NBA for many, many years. He's going to come on and talk a little bit about looking at the Lakers from the scouting perspective and kind of what his experience has been. So interesting conversation that I've got on here with him. But before we get to that, a few news topics that I want to get into, and a little bit about Alex Caruso as well. So I want to start off talking about Tyronn Lue. And this whole story going around Luke Walton. I mean, the rumors have been swirling for quite a while now that Luke Walton is on the hot seat. Okay, I mean, think back to the very beginning of the season when the season was only a few games old, and Magic Johnson is having this face-to-face with Luke Walton where he's admonishing him for not winning more games. And despite the team saying that they were going to be patient, at the first opportunity, they showed that they weren't patient. So Luke Walton has been seemingly on the hot seat for a while. Yes, there's a lot to wrap up into this. Yeah, look, Luke Walton was the coach when Magic and Rob Pelinka came on board. He wasn't their guy. They didn't pick Luke Walton to be the coach. He's the guy that they inherited. So naturally, that's going to lead to some question marks about whether or not Luke Walton is the guy that they see moving forward, because a lot of times a new front office will come in and want their guy in as the coach. So Luke Walton has been under fire. We heard the rumor recently about Jason Kidd. And Jason Kidd Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN said that Jason Kidd was on the list. He was going to be considered by the Lakers for the head coaching spot, assuming they get rid of Luke Walton, which feels all but certain at this point. And that Jason Kidd was going to be part of it. And Jason Kidd, he did nothing to dissuade those rumors. He, in fact, was almost openly campaigning for the job. If you heard what he had to say when I believe he was on ESPN, and he was making all these comments about the Lakers organization, and without specifically saying I want the job, he made it pretty clear that he wants the job. Well, news story came out from Bill Oram of The Athletic, and one thing about Bill, from being at the games and from being there with Bill, he always seems to have Luke's ear. Luke always takes extra time to go sit and talk with Bill. So when he says these things that he did in this piece for The Athletic, I believe him. I do. I believe that this is factual. I believe this is true because Bill he has that kind of relationship. So in Bill Orm's piece, he mentions that Tyronn Lue called up, who has been linked to the Lakers as well, in addition to guys like Mark Jackson and some others. Tyronn Lue, who coached LeBron James in Cleveland with the Cavs, and Tyronn is a former Laker, called up Luke Walton and said that the Lakers hadn't approached him about coaching the team, and that if they did, he would let him know, let Luke Walton know. So why is that significant? Well, there's a few things here. First of all, the idea that the Lakers would be overtly, or at least just under the surface in terms of their efforts to hide this, they would be courting other coaches while Luke Walton is still under contract, while he's still coaching the team. That would be a bad look, but that is kind of the sense that we've been getting, that they are going to be looking for a new coach, and that maybe that search has already started going on, that maybe they're kicking around some names. But Lue was specific with Luke in saying that they had not contacted him. That discussion wasn't taking place, and that he feels some loyalty to Luke because they are friends, and that he would let Luke know if that was taking place. Obviously, Luke doesn't feel like the job is totally gone, that he's lost the job or anything like that. In fact, he has some comments to that effect in Bill's piece. But if Luke felt like it was just done, if someone had talked to Luke Walton and said, hey, we're letting you go, you're done, would he still be asking Tyronn Lue or having that conversation with Tyronn Lue where Lue would be telling him, like, hey, I'll let you know if they say anything to me? Maybe he could say, hey, I'm curious to see now that I know that I'm gone, that if the organization is really on the up and up and everything. But it feels like more fact finding, and that's me speculating. But this could be Luke trying to ask around and find out, hey, has the team called you? Has the team called you? Has the team called this guy? It doesn't seem like Luke wants to go. Even after this crazy season, all these things going on, Luke, I think to a degree, still cares about being the Lakers head coach, and as he should. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, because Luke is in a tough spot. Other coaches are obviously circling. The vultures are circling here. They want Luke's job. They would like to coach the Lakers, and he's got to deal with that. That's a tough situation to be in. I have the feeling that if he was going to stay, the organization would have said something. We would have heard something by now, right? If with all these rumors swirling, if you're planning on keeping Luke Walton, if you're Jeannie Buss, if you're Magic Johnson, Rob Pelinka, whoever, don't you come out and say at this point, no, Luke's our guy. He doesn't have anything to worry about, right? I mean, just to put the story to rest, but instead they don't say anything, and I think that silence is really saying a lot. I think it is. And it's unfortunate in some ways because I think Luke will be a good coach. And I've said this many times, despite, he obviously had made some mistakes this season, but it does seem like he's trying to find out if the Lakers are actively looking for someone else at this point, and maybe it could be a Tyronn Lue, maybe it could be a Jason Kidd, but up to this point, Lue sounds like he's going to take the high road and he's going to stay out of it until Luke does indeed get let go. Jason Kidd, on the other hand, is pretty much actively campaigning to get the job. So two different ways of going about that. Another thing that I want to get into, just two more topics here before we get to Bryan Oringher, is the whole big baller brand thing. Everything going on with Lonzo Ball. I know we haven't seen Lonzo on the court in months now. He's been dealing with that ankle injury. But, of course, everybody's heard at this point about what happened with big baller brand essentially falling apart. That's what seems to be happening here. Lonzo Ball distanced himself from the company after there was a bunch of money missing. His dad's business partner is apparently in the crosshairs as the reason why this money is missing. And I'll say this, look, Lonzo went and covered up his tattoo. Okay, he covered up his big baller brand tattoo, covered it up with dye, with a pair of dice. And by the way, it's not a great cover up, but that's a tough tattoo to cover up. I gotta say that it's a tough one to deal with. But yeah, a lot of people are kind of poking fun at Lonzo for how that came out. But he covered up the tattoo, and to me that says this is really done. That there really is no going back. We saw an associate of Lonzo's threw big baller brand shoes into the trash. It really does seem like it's done, and there's been talks about them folding the whole company and just not existing. And maybe Lonzo winds up with Nike or Reebok or Adidas or whoever. He may wind up with another company. But I think the big takeaway from this is that it's unfortunate that it seems like it's coming between a family. We're hearing these little rumblings that Lonzo and his brothers have not just distanced themselves from Big Baller Brand, but also maybe distanced themselves from their dad. And I hope these are untrue. I hope that's not the case. Okay, not to say I'm the biggest LeVar Ball fan in the world or anything like that. He has been on this show once before, and I had no problems with him coming on. He was exactly what I thought he would be coming on here, and he did his spiel and he turned on the LeVar Ball stick and everything. But he makes the time. He does what he can to get out there and promote, and you got to respect him for giving this a shot and trying. Right, trying to create something, trying to do something different. But at the end of the day, he's still their dad. And you don't want to see a family relationship torn apart like that. So while people have been kind of poking fun at Big Baller Brand, kind of making fun of it falling apart and things like that, And look, that's understandable. They were going out there saying they're going to take over the world and Big Baller Brand is gonna be the next big thing. And they were so brash in the way they went about it. Seeing them, kind of get their comeuppance as a brand. Okay, look, yeah, they overpriced their shoes. They were insanely high priced and all their products, and some of them got bad reviews and some people didn't get them. And look, all that's fair, but bottom line, at the end of the day, you have to hope that they do mend fences in terms of at least their family, and that doesn't become an impediment, because we've seen over the years, Kobe had some issues with his family and losing that connection there. That's not necessarily a positive thing, especially for a young athlete that's growing up in a very fast world. That's that you want people that are looking out for their best interest. And you can criticize LeVar Ball, but I think at the end of the day, he did want good things for Lonzo. He did want what was best for Lonzo Ball and his brothers as well. And so I'm hopeful that it doesn't wind up negatively impacting their family, and hopefully it hasn't already. Alex Caruso, let's talk a little bit about him. He's a guy, I actually wrote a piece about this for Lakers Nation recently about Alex Caruso and Jonathan Williams, but watching Alex Caruso play, the more I've seen of him this season, the more I am coming around to the idea of Alex Caruso being the backup point guard next season. Not being the G League guy, not being the guy that you stash with the South Bay Lakers, and then you let him come up every now and then and play a little bit in the NBA, and then you send him back. Not being that guy, being that guy that's consistently there as your backup point guard behind Lonzo Ball. It's a risk, I'll say that, but Alex Caruso is 25, and here's what's really intriguing to me. We know Caruso's already a pretty solid defender. He's deceptively athletic. We saw him against the Utah Jazz actually throw down a lob. He can get up. He's big for the point guard position. He does some good things out there on the floor. He's a better passer than what we've seen this season. And the thing that really held him back was his shooting. He really couldn't shoot from three. In fact, last season in 37 games, he only shot 30% from three. This season, that's changed. He's actually shooting 44% from three right now. 44%. Now, look, it's a tiny sample size. He's only played in, 18 games this season? So sample size is tiny. We have to recognize that. But he also increased his free throw percentage. Went from 70% to 81%. And that's a decent uptick, right? He's getting to the line more as well. So to me, those things together suggest that the shooting improvement, while it might be a little bit overinflated, isn't non-existent. It's not just a small sample size thing, that he really is improving as a shooter. And if he can do that, if he can show that he can consistently hit threes, then I think he can be an asset for an NBA team. And I'm hoping it's a team like the Lakers, because the Lakers are going to be in a situation this summer where if they land a top free agent, right, they land one of the best guys out there, they're going to have very little money to spend going forward. So they're going to need to find bargains. And Alex Caruso could be that. If you can get Alex Caruso on a minimum deal, he's the kind of guy that can do a lot of things for you, a lot of little things. He's not going to mess things up when he's out there on the floor. He's not going to ruin you. He's probably not going to win you a ton of games either, but he's just going to be that steady performer that I think every team needs. He's fought hard in order to get to where he is now, going from being undrafted, didn't get drafted, winds up fighting his way up through the G League and lands here with the Lakers. Of course, kind of won over Lakers fans against the Sacramento Kings in Summer League a couple years ago. And I think this is it. I think now is the time to give him the shot. Give him that chance. And I'll say this. I'm not 100% confident in it. If, say, the Lakers sign, let's say they go get Kawhi Leonard, right? And then you've got Lonzo Ball as your starter, and then Alex Caruso as your backup, and that's it. And you don't have another point guard. I think in that scenario, maybe you need one more point guard. I don't know if that's your third guard, whoever you bring in, or if you use Caruso as like your third point guard, just in case. Just in case the improved shooting isn't real, just in case he's not ready, although I think he is. The flip side is this, though. If they land a big free agent and it's a point guard, okay, so if you go land a Kemba Walker, you land a Kyrie Irving, and you might wind up still keeping Lonzo Ball. I think Lonzo Ball can play in a two-guard backcourt because he's so tall, he's so good defensively, he can guard twos just fine. I think he fits well. He's not a guy who needs the ball in his hand. He has to be able to shoot. If he can hit shots, then I think you'd be in good shape running a two-guard backcourt with Kemba or Kyrie and Lonzo. I think that's a workable thing. And if you do that, I think bringing in Alex Caruso as that other guard makes a lot of sense. Because you already have, look, if Caruso falters, if you're having some struggles or something like that, you've got Lonzo who can handle the ball as a point. You've got Kemba or Kyrie or whoever who can come in and handle the ball as a point guard. So you already have two other options there, even though both of them are starters. And then you can use Caruso as maybe a guard coming off the bench, and that's something you can work around. So I think that especially in that scenario where you sign a free agent point guard, then it becomes even more palatable to keep Alex Caruso on. I think I like the scrappiness we see from him. He doesn't bring everything Rondo brings in terms of experience, of course. Rondo is great with the young guys. He's really, really smart, even though he doesn't always make smart decisions on the floor. But I think that in considering the bang for your buck and the value you're going to get, I think Alex Caruso, it has to be an interesting guy. A stat that I looked up on him, as of this moment in Synergy, Alex Caruso is in the 78th percentile as a spot-up shooter. If he can continue anywhere near that level, he's a real nice compliment to keep out there. He's in the 96th percentile as a ball handler in the pick and roll, so he's really excelling in that scenario. We've seen him hit some lobs to JaVale McGee recently. He's doing a nice job dealing with pick and roll, and he's in the 94th percentile on defense. Now, again, the sample size is tiny, and I would expect these numbers to drop. I don't think he's that good of a player where he's going to stay at that level forever. But I do think he's shown enough to where the Lakers should very strongly consider keeping him around unless he's got a big offer from someone else, which I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm officially starting the campaign. Alex Caruso as a full-time member of the Lakers roster next season. I'd like to see it happen. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Should Alex Caruso be a full-time member of the Lakers? Let me know. Best way to do that is go onto iTunes, rate, subscribe, and review this show. And in your review, give me your thoughts on Caruso. Should the Lakers keep him around as a full-time member of the Lakers? Not on a two-way contract, not shuffling between the G League and the Lakers, but on the Lakers, taking up a roster spot. Do you think Alex Caruso has earned that at this point? Okay, guys, I'm going to bring on Bryan Oringher in just a moment, and we're going to be diving into the world of scouting and what his thoughts are on this year's Los Angeles Lakers. We're going to take a quick break to talk about betonline.ag. March Madness is upon us, and it's another huge month in sports across the NBA and NCAA. There's only one place to get in on all the action. That's betonline.ag. You can support the Lakers Nation podcast by going to clnsmedia.com/LeBron. That's clnsmedia.com/LeBron, and use promo code CLNS50 for a 50% sign-up bonus. Okay, that's CLNS50, betonline.ag. Go head over to that site, clnsmedia.com/LeBron, and get that 50% sign-up bonus for betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. So joining me now is Bryan Oringher of TL Sports Media and ScoutWithBryan.com. Bryan's got a ton of experience in the NBA as the head video coordinator for the Washington Wizards for a number of years. He's also a scout for the Atlanta Hawks and the Toronto Raptors. Guys, all kinds of great information that Bryan has been putting out there on his Twitter feed. If you guys want to go check it out, it's at ScoutWithBryan. Go make sure you hit him up on Twitter. Bryan, thanks so much for joining me here.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let's talk about some of this stuff, because it's always fun when we can take someone who's got a lot of experience in the NBA and sort of peel back the curtain a little bit. What has your experience been like working with NBA teams, both as a video coordinator and as a scout? You're breaking down the X's and O's for teams, giving them information on teams they're going to be playing, all sorts of things. What are some of the things that you did for the Wizards and the Hawks and the Raptors?
Yeah, sure. So, I was with the Wizards for 6 years total. 4 years I traveled with the team as the head video coordinator. And, in that job, I tell people it's almost like you're getting a MBA in basketball. You're just almost like an assistant coach. You're just with the staff in every coach's meeting, pregame, postgame, halftime in the locker rooms. You're really overseeing the game planning process, how that comes together in terms of opponent preparation, player development, tendencies, everything like that. So it was just a really great way to really learn the game inside and out for 3 different coaches during my time there. And then, I did a little regional advanced scouting for the Hawks and Raptors last season. Got to, actually go to some games and get out of the locker room and watch some live basketball, which was fun to. And for people that don't know what advanced scouts do, you're pretty much, it's almost like you're a legal spy.
Mm-hmm.
You're just pretty much, if we play the Warriors soon, I'd go and just watch Steve Kerr all game and pretty much steal the play calls. So a lot of really interesting things I've gotten to do over the last 9 years total in pretty high level basketball, and really let me learn a ton about the game, and I'm really grateful for it.
So that was one of the things I was going to ask you about was what's the advantage of scouts being there in person? We know scouts are on the road a ton in the NBA. There's a ton of travel involved, but you go to these games in person. Given the advanced analytics that we have access to today, what is it that you glean from actually being there in person versus watching a game on TV and then going through the synergy stats and everything else that gets generated from a game?
Yeah, so there's a couple different types. I think a couple teams have some personnel scouts, and that's on the front office side. And what they do basically is that's just on the player evaluation, just monitoring guys constantly for, potential future acquisitions, trade signings, whatever it be. So they're just kind of looking overall at players and formulating an opinion on them. On the coaching, game planning side, that pretty much, to my knowledge, is just, the advanced scout. And really the only, that job, it's going to sound really simple, to an outsider, because like I said, it literally is just watching the coach. And if at 9 minutes he calls elbow, 8 minutes he calls thumb down, you're just literally stealing the play calls. And that's just essential because, you can't really pick all that stuff up from the TV. The TV feed obviously, maybe has one or two times over a game where you can, get lucky and catch a coach calling something. But otherwise, you don't really get the play calls on that. So, it's still just a huge thing. There's a lot of teams that have pretty massive playbooks and will run, 50 to 100 different plays. And, that's why the advanced scout has to be there and has to get those calls so that the video coordinator and the coaching staff can prepare the team, the right way for the games. Sure.
Now, one of the first games that I covered, I always think about this whenever I discuss scouting in any sort of form. One of the very first games that I covered was an opportunity to go cover a long time ago Celtics versus Suns game that was in Phoenix. So I went to go cover that, and sitting in the impress row, I got seated next to two scouts, and I mean having no real insight into the scouting side of things, I was amazed by how much the scouts were talking back and forth and were kind of sharing notes and discussing, all the different plays that teams were running and things like that. I always, from an outsider perspective, I figured that they would be like competing with each other and everything, but it's like its own little scouting community, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It's like a fraternity, and yeah, it's funny because I think my perception also on the outside was like yours, that it'd be a little more antagonistic and there'd be rivalries and all that, but I guess when you think about it, really, like you said, if people are at a Celtics Suns game, for example, both those guys are people with other teams who are playing those teams coming up. So, they're really just working together because, it's not proprietary info or anything like that. They're not discussing their own teams. They're just trying to get every Suns or every Celtics play call. And you really do have to help each other out because, one of the seats might be closer to the Suns coach, one might be closer to the Celtics, and it might be the opposite of, who's actually trying to scout who. So, yeah, it definitely is a big fraternity. And I think Sherwood, Ethan Strauss wrote a good piece about kind of advanced scouting in general. And it's a really unique, interesting part of basketball that I definitely recommend people to check out if they haven't.
Yeah, that was a great piece. It's amazing that the way this all breaks down, the way you're looking for the coaches to do different things or call different plays, and then you just kind of log them in the books. I was amazed that as the scouts were typing stuff in, I'm kind of looking over their shoulder as I'm doing my game notes, and I'm trying to look for the narrative, for the storyline of the game as a writer. They're just putting down simple play calls, and they're throwing in swear words every here and there. Like it was a totally different world, and just really fascinating when you look at that. And I would imagine that at a certain point, you start to just see basketball in a completely different way when you're breaking down different plays that are being run. And I've seen you start to do that already on Twitter. You're breaking things down for people and showing them what plays different teams are running and why certain things are working, because the average fan tends to just watch the ball when really so much is happening off the ball, and that's sometimes the stuff that matters even more.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I think analytics are great. I think the eye test is great. But one of my kind of points that I've talked about on Twitter and believe firmly is that, if you really want to understand what's going on in the game, I don't think we pay enough attention to play calls, to be honest. And that doesn't mean, you don't have to know floppy down twists. You don't have to know the exact semantics of every different thing. But, when you consider that, for example, in the Houston-Milwaukee game tonight, Houston is locked into the exact, 10 different plays that Milwaukee runs, and they have an exact scheme for how they want to defend those plays, and it could be a completely different way of defending them than every other team in the league does it, So I think those things, understanding player tendencies, understanding, what plays they run for certain players, what the keys are to guarding them, all those things are nuanced, and I know, over the casual fans' head for the most part, but I think it's really, really important, and, I think you'd be a fool to kind of just look at analytics or just look at calls or anything. But if you really want a complete picture of what's going on in the game and to really understand what you're seeing, I think it's important, to have a really good understanding of the terminology to some extent and know what you're seeing scheme-wise as well.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it gives you just a different look at the game. Not that it's the whole picture, but it just gives you a different perspective. It's putting together sort of the pieces of the pie, and they all mean something. They all have their own value. It's just having a different thing to pull from. It's an asset, I think, to be able to see the game on that level. Bryan, so obviously this being a Lakers podcast, if you were scouting this Lakers team, and I know you've been watching some Lakers games, what are your main takeaways? Like, what would you be recommending the team you're working for, whether it's the Wizards or the Raptors or whoever, what would you be telling them about this Lakers team?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fatal flaw obviously was the lack of shooting, and just the roster construction. I think, they just did a really poor job of surrounding LeBron and those guys with enough shooting so that teams could really, really collapse the paint and, make it tough on him in transition and in the post and, in pick and rolls, all the areas he's normally thrived in. He's still thriving and he's still been great to an extent. But, better than I do. I haven't checked in the last couple of weeks, but I know their three-point percentage and attempts and everything has usually been around the very bottom of the league, and that's just not a recipe usually for a LeBron team. It's been the complete opposite of that, usually with LeBron. So that really stands out. I think they get. I think JaVale is a really weak point as a starting center. At least I think he gets kind of pummeled on the defensive glass, and any physical center can really take advantage of him. In the post, and guys like Valanciunas, even that are just kind of bruisers, tend to have their way with him. And yeah, I mean, I think overall I kind of saw, a team that I think was probably good enough and would have made the playoffs if they had stayed completely healthy and if Lonzo had stayed healthy. But obviously, when LeBron went down, they had a huge skid and the wheels kind of fell off. And that's the gist of it.
When it's time to make a hire for your small business, naturally you want to find the best person for the job. Odds are that person is on LinkedIn. I have sat through tons of interviews over my professional career, both interviews I've been in and interviews I've conducted looking for people for specific jobs. Some of them have been great, some of them not so great. LinkedIn simplifies the process by connecting you with people that are quality candidates that won't waste your time and make the most sense for your role. LinkedIn Jobs uses knowledge of both hard skills and soft skills to match you with the people who fit your role the best. People come to LinkedIn every day to learn and advance their careers, so LinkedIn understands what they're interested in and looking for, which means when you use LinkedIn Jobs to hire someone, your matches are based on so much more than just a resume. Your LinkedIn jobs matches are based on skills and background, but also interest, activities, and passions. Matching lets you quickly get a group of the most relevant qualified candidates for your role. That way you can focus on the candidates you want to spend time talking to and make a quality hire you're excited about. Customers rank LinkedIn jobs #1 in delivering quality hires. Post a job today at linkedin.com/LakersNation and you'll get $50 off your first job post. That's linkedin.com/LakersNation. Terms and conditions apply.
So is there anything that you see that's dangerous about this Lakers team? I mean, we heard a lot of the kind of the problems with it, and that's there's certainly many of them. There's roster construction issues. They have injury problems. There was drama brought up at the trade deadline. All of these things. What positives do you have? Like, what would you be telling a team to watch out for? Like, hey, they're really good at this, if there's anything.
LeBron. No, I mean, they got some good pieces. I was pretty big and saying on Twitter too, back around the deadline, that I thought the offer they made the Pelicans was fair, to be honest, and I thought the Pelicans were being petty and not doing that over kind of a personal vendetta type thing. I think I like some of the pieces. I think Ingram has a ton of potential. I think he shows some great flashes and can is an ISO mid-range type throwback scorer. He's become a better finisher at the rim. He does some things really well. I think Kuzma he's interesting. I think they have a lot of really good prospects. He shot the ball great last year. This year he plays more like a small four, but hasn't shot it well. I think Lonzo does a lot of things overall well that don't necessarily blow up a stat sheet, but I think I think he's a solid starting point guard going forward. So I think they have some pieces. I think they've just kind of really found out that you really need vets and guys with experience to win in the league, and that's why they'll have to surround LeBron with a max superstar or two if they want to really win. And they'll have to ultimately decide which of those young building block type guys are going to stick around for the long haul and can play a role as a third or fourth best player, and which they use for bait, obviously, to get those max players.
Sure, and when you're looking at this team, I mean, yes, the young guys all have their strengths and weaknesses and everything, but you mentioned that veterans are what win, and that's what they tried to do in the offseason. They tried to bring in veterans that were going to help. I just think they didn't pick the right guys. I mean, bringing in Rajon Rondo, bringing in Lance Stevenson, JaVale. I didn't have a problem with JaVale for a veteran minimum deal. Ask him to be your starter, though. I think that's an issue. So if the Lakers came to you over the summer and they said, hey, what prototype players should we surround, say, LeBron and Lonzo and Brandon Ingram and Kyle Kuzma? We want to build around those guys. What are some pieces out there that you'd be looking for, and possibly some players that pop into your head?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I agree with you, to an extent. I think, I said, for example, I think Rondo would have been fine as a mentor to Lonzo and just playing that complete backup role and advising him, and I think that was well intentioned. But then when he got thrust into having to play 30-35 minutes, he's a disaster in that fit, because he's not a spot up shooter. He doesn't really fit well alongside LeBron in huge minutes. Same with Stevenson. I think he's a guy that's been kind of a thorn for LeBron in the playoffs, and he's a pest and a good defender, tough guy, and those are the type of guys. If you can get him, on LeBron's team for the playoffs, that's great. That's taken away somebody that tends to bother him. But if you don't even make the playoffs in the first place, obviously it's a problem. And I think Brook, is the biggest guy that comes to mind. Obviously, I think that was a huge mistake, and I'm with you. I mean, I agree that there was nothing wrong with giving JaVale a minimum deal. I think the problem was taking a guy that played 10 minutes a game the last couple of years for the Warriors and didn't even play every game, and asking him to be a 20-minute a game starter, that's a huge leap, to go from a guy that was basically kind of like a shiny toy for the Warriors to roll out for a few minutes and get a few lobs, it's the most minutes I think he's played since I was with him and with the Wizards, which was a long, long time ago.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was just doomed to fail. And then, this offseason, I think obviously, that they, like I said, they need a second superstar, whether it be Davis or Kyrie or both or whoever it is. But, I think the young guys are good enough to fit alongside a couple superstars. But I think the biggest problem they kind of saw this season is just a lot of redundancy. Ingram's a mid-range guy. Kuzma does a lot of his work kind of in the mid-post and the elbows and trying to post up. Beasley, who they signed and then obviously had to get rid of, was a post or ISO type player. They just had all these guys who were pretty redundant. They need a lot of they need more guys like Bullock and some stretch bigs and guys that can really space the floor. So I think that obviously should and probably will be their biggest thing to get this summer. And obviously I think you need a legitimate, center, whether he can shoot or not. I think you need a guy that can handle 20, 25 minutes and take the banging. And, starting the season with JaVale really is the only true center on the roster, I think was a huge, huge mistake in hindsight.
Yeah, they definitely need to find that anchor in the middle. They need to find somebody who can challenge at the rim. They need to find somebody who can score a little bit inside and do all these things. And then they need to make sure that if they find someone that looks kind of sort of like that, they don't trade that person to the Clippers. I think that's going to be key for them to avoid doing that.
I did not understand that one at all. I like him a lot. Yeah, and I've said that too. I think he's a starting center in the league long term, and I think he, to be honest, I mean, I was the part of the reason I liked the deal for the Pelicans is when they talked about him being in it, in addition to Lonzo and Kuzma and Ingram. If that was true, like I said, that's potentially 4 starters, and even if only 2 or 3 of them turn out to be good starters, I think that was a ton of potential in that deal. But he was the guy that already was kind of a starting caliber center, and now is that for the Clippers and gives them really good minutes. So yeah, I mean, I think that trade, I get it to an extent, just in that I like Mike Muscala, and I think he is a decent stretch big, but it was kind of just a failure on the front office's part to see that, obviously he's not right physically, and you have to really know that. That's the job. That's knowing all the intel and knowing what his state is going to be. And, when you, couple it with, they had to get rid of Beasley, but I think still they didn't get nearly enough of a return for a guy who's, a young starting center in this league, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Zubac he's got plenty of potential, and I think you're right on the money that he is a potentially a starting center. I mean, he can do all the things that you'd want a starting center to do. You mentioned that Mike Muscala wasn't right physically there. Was there something that you noticed about him, or something you had heard? Because we know he's been banged up a little bit, but haven't heard a whole lot concrete.
No, I hadn't heard anything specific. I just, my recollection, at least, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, was like, in the first few games, at least after they got him, that he had a couple, DNPs because of the injury, and it seems like, that's at least just continued to linger and bother him. And, I think it was something that was kind of existing and had already hampered him, in Philly this season a little bit, unless I'm wrong. But, I mean, like I said, I think he's a solid player, and I think, he makes sense around LeBron as a big that can shoot it a little bit. I just think, he's inferior to Zubac, and especially if, like we talked about their center situation and how it basically left JaVale as the only guy. I think that just, definitely didn't work, and I think also didn't, really make sense fully when you think about it.
Right, yeah, it wasn't just wasn't a lot of sense to me. Just value-wise, just wasn't a great trade. Bryan, let's finish with this. So there's been a whole lot of talk about Luke Walton and his future, and about the fact that he's probably not going to stick around as the Lakers coach. They're probably going to look elsewhere. But let me ask you this: you watch, you break down plays. You've seen a bit of this Lakers team. Do you think that a different coach, if everything else stayed the same, do you think a different coach could have pushed this team into the playoffs?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, and it's it's a really hard one to answer. I don't know for sure. I mean, I think I respect Luke, and I think he obviously did a great job in Golden State and proved that he could really lead a team like when Kerr was out of veteran players, and kind of is even keeled and just has that personality to lead guys that have been around and done it. I think it's definitely fair to question if he was the right fit though for the Lakers at this point, which was needing a maybe more of a disciplinarian coach for a bunch of young guys who didn't really get it fully and do everything it takes to win every single game. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but I think the reason you hear, and who knows, and who knows which of these are fake names, real names, but you hear guys like Lue and Kidd and so on. I think they have a rep as a little bit more, just harder on players and less of a players coach, more strict disciplinarian types. I think, LeBron, from his comments and just general attitude, seems like he's in agreement that some of these guys need to be toughened up and coached a little bit harder. And so I think we'll definitely see that happen, and it most likely they'll be better next year because not just of the coach, but because they'll get another superstar with LeBron and have a much better team. And then it'll go back to a chicken or egg type argument. Was it Luke, or was it just the players and so on? But yeah, I think he does some things really well and draws up some good ATOs and has a good demeanor and so on. I just do think it's fair to question if he was the right fit for a team with a lot of young guys who needed a lot of molding.
Yeah, that's fair. I still think Luke he's going to do fine somewhere, wherever he goes. I think he's eventually going to be a good coach, but it just seems like it's not in the cards for the Lakers this season, and it's tough to say whether or not he would actually, another coach would have done better or anything. Maybe they could have done things a little bit differently, but I mean, really, the failures of this season have come down to, sure, the coaching and rotations and things like that. That's a factor, but you've also got injuries, you've got the rumors, you've got roster construction, you have all of these different things that kind of came together to create this perfect storm of misery for Lakers fans this season. So certainly tough. Bryan, thanks so much for coming on here and giving us your insight. Definitely appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you again for having me.
And guys, make sure that you go and support Bryan. You can find him on Twitter at ScoutWithBryan, find him with TL Sports Media or find him on ScoutWithBryan.com. And give him a follow. He puts out tons of great information out there. So definitely go check that out. That's going to wrap things up for today. We'll be back next week with a new show. Make sure you head over to the Lakers Nation Facebook page. Check out the post-game show that Jazz Kang and I do. After every single game, we take your comments and your thoughts on the Los Angeles Lakers. And follow us on social media at Lakers Nation on Twitter, at Lakers Nation Official on Instagram. Of course, at Lakers Nation on Facebook as well. And don't forget to head to LakersNation.com for all your latest breaking Lakers news. Till next time, see ya.